All right, so let's tackle our first breakpoint. And I'm going to go into my style sheet and put my first breakpoint here. And what we're going to do is we're going to change those images that were at the top. There were 3 floated on the top. Let's just kind of go. We have 3 that are floated on the top, and our first breakpoint is going to be, our 2 are going to be floated, and then Mr. Barama is going to come, or Barack Obama, the dude is going to come and take up 100% down below. So that's where we're going on our first breakpoint. So the first thing I can do, and what is done most often, is on the style sheet, at the very bottom, I'm going to put my first media query. Now, is it important to put it at the very bottom? The answer to that is yes, because remember that all of these styles are going to be the default. And so these have to be, this is all of the styles that take place for the desktop version. But now what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we might alter or change some of the defaults when our viewport size changes. So we want to keep everything originally, but we might need to make some adjustments afterwards. And so that's why we're putting it on the style sheet, and we're making sure that it goes after the last style. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our media query at media. It's trying to help me. At media, and we're going to say this is for screen, so we're going to do screen, and then we're going to use and open and close parenthesis, and then we're going to put in our width. Now this one is going to be max width of 998 pixels. Okay, and so what we're suggesting here, so what we're suggesting here is that everything inside these curly braces is going to change if the width of this viewport goes less than 998 pixels. So we're going to put everything that applies to that condition. In other words, here's our desktop. The desktop is 999 pixels and greater. Everything will still apply, but if the desktop viewport gets a little bit smaller than 998 pixels, we want to make some adjustments. We're going to override some of the defaults or make some changes. And so that's what we're working hard here in this media query. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take column 1, which is the first image, I think that was of Stitch, and column 2, so class column 2, and we're going to apply a style to column 1 and column 2, and that is that we're going to make those widths 45%. So we're making the widths of those columns bigger. So they used to be, I don't remember what it was before, 30 or something. Well, let's look. So column 1, let's see where those were. Column 1 and column 2 were 30%. So now we're going to make those larger, so they'll take up half of the screen, right? Each one is going to take up half of the screen. So we're overriding these particular settings, and we're going to say that they're going to be 45%. And then we're going to take that column 3, and we're going to make that one, we'll do that one as 100%, because we want that to take up the full width of the viewport. All right, so let's look at our screen and see if that worked. So we have our, I'm going to refresh just to make sure. Let's do I think it was my device.io, and I'm going to check my viewport size. So let's see, it says I'm at 827. So let's see, definitely here I should have the desktop version. Oh, what is it, 998? So let's go a little bit bigger. So 998 or bigger, I think is what the number was. And so now I should definitely have that 3 side by side. But as soon as that device got smaller, down below that 998, now we can see that these images, these columns are both taking up 45%, and this one should be taking up 100%. So we can see our media queries taking effect. All right. Oops, wrong way. So something I want to suggest to you or add to you, this is, and we can continue on with smaller and smaller styles. So I can add more media queries down here below. And remember that we go in order. So if we're going larger to smaller, which is what we're doing, we're also going to go larger to smaller in our viewport sizes. So if I were to create another viewport, a media query, media, and this one's screen, I need to get rid of that ampersand. This one needs to be smaller. So parenthesis, now I would do a smaller width of 998. This one would be smaller, so max width. And then I think the next one I was going to do was 768 pixels. So because I'm going desktop to mobile version, I'm going bigger, my desktop size, to smaller. 998 would be my next getting smaller, and then my next getting smaller. So make sure you pay attention to that. But what I'm going to do is something a little bit different before I go on, so I can continue on with smaller and smaller media queries. Something else you can do is after your original style sheet, I'm going to just paste in what I already have created, so that way you don't see me fat fingering. But this is another way to do a media query. And the suggestion here is that I'm going to link to a different style sheet. So go ahead, browser, use this style sheet. But in addition, here's the same scenario. If our screen size, I said 992, so I have a little conflict here, I think. I didn't remember which numbers I used, but you get the idea. So if the screen size is 998 pixels or less, here we had a media query that did a suggestion, but now we're saying instead, utilize a different responsive style sheet. So I created a style sheet called responsive styles, and if we're 998 or less, go ahead and pull that responsive style sheet into the mix. And so let's pull that up. Currently mine is blank. So let me just put these side by side momentarily. What I'm going to do is take these styles that I created. So in essence, I've already done this. That's what this line is doing. This whole media query portion is doing. So I'm just going to pull this stuff out because that's what we wanted at that breakpoint. Control X. I'm going to paste it here. Control V. And I'm going to erase the media styles I've had here. And so this is an alternative way to do the same thing. I'm simply saying, instead of writing the media query in the main style sheet, I've done it here in my link, saying utilize this style sheet if we're 998 pixels or less. And therefore, these are the styles that would be applied. So if we look at our page, it shouldn't look any different. It should still be behaving the same way. So if I refresh this page and I go larger, so it's still doing the same thing, it's just doing it from a different link style sheet. So whichever way you prefer to do is fine for your own, what makes sense to your development practice. All right, so we've created our first breakpoint, and in our first breakpoint we have put our first two images, the one of rock, the rock, and the one of Stitch side by side. Oh, yeah. And then, so there's our first breakpoint. All right, so in our next video, we'll do the next breakpoint.